Now, the National Association of Law Students has launched a scathing attack on the governing NPP's proposed policy on reforming legal education. The group says government's plan of expanding infrastructure is, quote, weak, misleading and awkward, of quote. It explains that expanding infrastructure will not address the immediate challenges that are facing students. Law students have in the last 4 years demanded that legal education is made accessible to all. Now, thousands of persons holding law degrees have not been able to gain admission into the Ghana School of Law, the only accredited institution running the professional law program. The NPP and NDC in their manifestos propose solutions, but the students are backing the NDC's ideas. My colleague Joseph Akable has more. Well, he joins me with more on the phone. Joseph, do tell us a bit more about the concerns that the conveners have.
And so first, they make reference to the promises that have been made by both parties. The NPP in its manifesto promises that they will expand the infrastructure to increase access to the professional program. In terms of the NDC, they make a number of suggestions. The first being that they are going to accredit at the universities some selected faculties to run the program. They are also going to set up a council that will be responsible for accrediting these institutions. And so those are the two main promises that they make in that regard. And the association holds a view that, that reflects the current situation more, because they say that the NPP's pledge of providing an infrastructure is something that cannot be done within 12 months. They again make the point that they've had a series of engagements with the governing NPP, and so far, our government has not been forthcoming in terms of addressing their concerns. In fact, they make the point that if they were mindful and committed to legal education, they should have dealt with the issue of remarking fees that has been a subject of concern to the students over the period. And so they hold a view that the NDC's ideas present some hope for them, and it shows care, even though they are quick to add that they intend to hold them to account because they are politicians, and if they find they fail to deal with this too, they intend to hold them to account.
Interesting, Joseph. Well, thank you very much for that update. I also have one of the conveners. Joseph, you hang on for me. I have one of the conveners of the National Association of Law Students, Philemon La, like I said, for this conversation. Hi, Philemon. Hi, Philemon. Do you hear me?
Hi, good afternoon. I can hear you.
Fantastic. I think you were muted earlier. Now, why do you have issues with one promise and not the other? They both offer some hope, don't they?
All right. Fundamentally, you'd recall that sometime last year, law students in their thousands went on a demonstration just to present a petition to those in power. We met with the brute force of the Ghana Police Service. We were beaten. We did not succeed in presenting our petition to our own house, the Flagstaff House. So efforts have been made by law students in this country to reach out to those who can effect change in legal education reforms in this country. And for the 3 years that we have engaged robustly, we have not been able to achieve anything. So it's welcoming news to hear that there's something in place to ensure that there will be reforms in legal education. But fundamentally, this does not mean that the MPP or this government cannot do anything. We are open. For us as law students in this country, we are open to the option that gives us immediate reforms now. And this government, this party, this president has the option to institute measures now, even before the election. We are open to whichever party that would give us reforms in legal education. So we are open to something that leads to a radical, imminent solution to the problems we face.
And you find that radical approach in the NDC's proposal how?
Yeah, it's not radical because the MPP's option is not radical because they talk about infrastructure. And that's quite misplaced because the problems we face now are not even fundamental about infrastructure. It's about reform. So hearing that a system would be in place to allow for various faculties to train law students is welcoming. Fundamentally, that is. It's talking about UDS or a school up north. This is a very important thing because it allows for access for people up north to be able to have legal education. Hitherto, you'd have to travel all the way from the north just to come have legal education in Accra. So fundamentally, the point is that access is what we want. And the party that allows for access is what the law students of this country would support.
Okay, I think I lost you a bit. Hang on. Help me understand. Did you say that the NPP's plan is not radical, but it's good because it gives access? Because that's something you're not very enthused about. Help me if I'm wrong.
No. What we are saying is that the NPP option is just infrastructure as presented by the manifesto of the NPP.
Right.
They say they will increase a radical infrastructure means to be able to accommodate. But we are saying that infrastructure is a long-term measure. We are looking for something that is short-term. In the worst case, in the medium term, and that short-term, medium-term option is what the NDC provides. And the National Association of Law Students is open to the option that allows for radical transformation reforms in the legal education architecture in this country.
Should that make me believe that should the NPP, for example, add something to what they're proposing that you feel is radical enough, much more than the NDC's proposal, that you'll switch sides?
What we want is reforms in legal education. We do not care the color of the cat so far as it can catch mice. That's our position.
What do you say to those who say you are just being political and that you are actually an NDC person?
This cannot be a political objective because, well, let me be cautious in mentioning it, but we have several other leaders within the National Association of Law Students who belong to different partisan persuasions. We do not care what political color is in place. What we care about is reforms in legal education. And whichever party it is that provides that is what we stand by. It is not about an NDC leader of the National Association of Law Students or an MPP leader, because we are made up of people from different political colors in this country. It is immaterial, our political persuasion. What is material, what is imminent, what is patriotic at this point is reforms in legal education. Nothing about or nothing beyond reforms in legal education.
So just to be clear, you are not an NDC person?
That is immaterial. My partisan position is immaterial at this point.
Fair enough.
What is material is that we want reforms in legal education.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'll go back to Joseph. Hang on for me, Mr. La. I'll come back to you. Joseph, we know that CDD Fellow in Law and Justice, Professor Stephen Asare, has also been at the forefront of this fight. What does he make of the two proposals?
In fact, he backs the NDC's view as well, and he writes that on the issue of making legal education accessible, it is fair to say the NDC has done more listening than the NPP and has offered a far superior solution to the problem. He goes on to say that it must be the universities that should be running such a program and not any centralized institution like the Ghana School of Law.
Okay, so just to be clear, Mr. Professor Stephen Asare himself, does he have any stake in law education in this country?
Not directly, but he's been at the forefront. He's taking matters to the courts. He's been seeking reforms for at least 3 or 4 years now, and asking that he holds the view that the only way to radically change things is to ensure that the GLC's dominance and control of legal education is taken from it, because it has judges who some of whom end up educating on matters that come eventually before the court. So he wants it to be taken from them in the first place. He again wants the faculties of law to be allowed to run the programs as well. And so you don't have to necessarily all be heading to a single school to offer the professional course, as he says is done with other programs like the accounting and the others. And so that is what he wants, so that he can have a centralized body that administers the exam, not one that runs the tuition itself.
Just to give our viewers the benefit of that background. Joseph, thank you very much. Mr. La, I'll wrap up with you. What are the next steps for the association now that, of course, the election campaigns are, we're in the heat of the election campaigns, and we're just about 80-something days to the elections? Mr. La, do you hear me? It looks like I've lost him. Oh, you hear me, do you?
Yes, I hear you, but except I didn't hear the question you asked.
Okay, I was just wrapping up. Yes, I'm wrapping up with you, and I was asking what next steps are there for the association as we're, already in the heat of political campaigns and election is just a few 80 days away.
The association is open to reforms in legal education. The association is happy about the NDC alternative. The association is willing and ready to partner with this government if they will immediately cause reforms in legal education. Students in the Ghana School of Law have to pay as much as 1,500 cedis just to have their paper remarked in case they feel that it's been unfairly marked. That should end. Post-course students would go to train in other Commonwealth jurisdictions and come to Ghana and pay as much as £6,000 just to have legal education. That should end. These are options. These are problems that the government can, as a matter of policy, be able to effect. And we are guided by the fact that under Section 1, Subsection 5 of the Legal Professions Act, the Attorney General has powers to give general policy directions to the General Legal Council, and the General Legal Council shall comply. The Attorney General is an appointee of this government, of this president, and we hope that by the direction of the Attorney General, the General Legal Council will begin to consider some of these problems that students are facing. Any option that gives us radical, immediate solutions to reforms in legal education is what we champion for. We are not a partisan organization. We care only about the interests of our students.
Mr. La, I appreciate your time with us this afternoon. Thank you so much for making that time. Philemon La is the National Association of Law Students president.